The river churned, muddy water like Claire's thoughts. Matthew Keller stood, shaking, hands cuffed.
"She's here," he'd whispered, voice breaking.
Claire watched the murky water. No body, only Matthew's fear, thick and suffocating. Her gut screamed, "Liar!"
Where is she, Matthew?
Her voice, sharp, cut through the morning air. He flinched.
I told you.
A sob escaped his lips.
He made me.
He pointed to a clump of trees, his face pale. Claire's heart pounded. Was Sarah there? Dead or alive? If you don't like missing crucial details but still want to understand the full story, then you need to watch the first part of the final confession before continuing. The air hung heavy as they approached the trees. A chill wind rustled the leaves, whispering secrets. Then they saw it. Nestled amongst the roots, a worn leather suitcase. Claire's breath caught. It was Sarah's. She recognized it from the missing person report. Inside, clothes neatly folded, a hairbrush with a blonde strand of hair, but no Sarah. Hope, like a fragile bird, fluttered in Claire's chest, then died. This wasn't over. This was just the beginning. The interrogation room was cold, sterile. Matthew sat hunched, a broken man. Claire watched him, her gaze unwavering.
Who is he, Matthew?
Silence, then a whisper.
"My brother, Danny."
Claire leaned forward.
What did he do to Sarah?
Matthew's eyes welled up.
He took her to a cabin, said she wouldn't come back.
Every word felt like a punch to Claire's gut. Sarah was alive, but for how long? Claire felt a knot of dread twisting in her stomach. Matthew's confession, while damning, was also strangely vague. He painted himself as a pawn, his brother Danny the monster. Was he protecting himself, minimizing his role? She looked at the photograph of Sarah, her smile bright and full of life. A life hanging by a thread. Claire knew one thing for sure. She wouldn't rest until she found Sarah. The clock was ticking. Every second counted.
We need to find that cabin now.
The team jumped into action, adrenaline pumping. Maps were spread, locations analyzed. Time was slipping through their fingers. Claire could feel it in her bones. They were close. But would they be in time? The old cabin stood silent, shrouded in an eerie stillness. The porch creaked ominously as Claire approached, gun drawn. Her heart pounded against her ribs. This was it, the lion's den. She kicked open the door, her heart in her throat. The air was thick with the smell of pine and something else. Fear. "Sarah?" she called out, her voice echoing in the silence. A flicker of movement in the corner. The room was cloaked in darkness, shadows dancing on the walls as if they had a life of their own. Claire's eyes adjusted to the dim light. She had been searching for hours, her heart pounding with every creak and groan of the old house. The air was thick with tension, and every step she took felt like walking on eggshells. There, tied to a chair, was Sarah. Her sister, her best friend, the one person she had sworn to protect. The sight of her bound and helpless sent a shiver down Claire's spine. Her eyes were wide with terror, but she was alive. The fear in Sarah's eyes was palpable. A silent scream for help that pierced Claire's heart. Relief washed over Claire like a tidal wave, but it was short-lived. The realization that they were not alone in the room hit her like a ton of bricks. A shadow shifted in the doorway. The figure was tall and menacing, a dark silhouette against the dim light. Danny, her brother, the one she had trusted, the one she had loved. Now he was the monster in the shadows. S3, media, man in doorway, menacing figure in dark, shadowy man appearing.
"You should have stayed away, Claire!" Danny's voice was a guttural roar, filled with anger and betrayal.
He lunged at Sarah with a hunting knife glinting in his hand. The blade caught the light, a deadly promise of what was to come. Time seemed to slow down. Every heartbeat, every breath, every movement was magnified in the stillness of the moment. Claire reacted instinctively, firing her weapon. The sound of the gunshot was deafening, a sharp crack that shattered the silence. The shot echoed through the stillness of the woods. The forest seemed to hold its breath, the echoes of the gunshot fading into the night. Claire stood there, her heart racing, her mind reeling from what had just happened. She had saved her sister, but at what cost? The bond between them would never be the same, and the shadow of Danny's betrayal would haunt them forever. Danny lay on the floor, the gun clattering away from his grasp. The room was eerily silent, save for the faint sound of his labored breathing. The once vibrant energy of the room had been replaced by a chilling stillness. His eyes were wide with shock, his lifeblood staining the wooden floorboards. Each breath he took seemed to draw him closer to the inevitable. The crimson pool around him grew larger, a stark contrast to the pale hue of his skin. Sarah, free from her restraints, ran into Claire's arms, her body shaking with sobs. The weight of the night's events bore heavily on her, and the safety of Claire's embrace was the only solace she could find. Her tears flowed freely, a release of pent-up fear and anguish. As Claire held Sarah tight, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was still amiss. Why did Matthew confess? The questions swirled in her mind, each one more perplexing than the last. The pieces of the puzzle didn't fit together, and the nagging feeling of unease grew stronger. What was the real story? Claire's mind raced as she tried to piece together the events that led to this moment. There were too many loose ends, too many unanswered questions. She knew that the truth was buried somewhere, but finding it would be a daunting task. The answers, she knew, were buried deep within the twisted minds of two brothers. Their bond was a complex web of secrets and lies, and unraveling it would require more than just determination. It would take courage, resilience, and a willingness to face the darkest corners of their past. One dead, one waiting for his fate. The contrast was stark, a reminder of the thin line between life and death, guilt and innocence. As Claire looked at the lifeless body and the man in handcuffs, she knew that the journey to uncover the truth was far from over. The real story was still out there, waiting to be discovered. Back at the station, Claire watched as Sarah was reunited with her tearful family. The room was filled with a mix of emotions, relief, joy, and an undercurrent of sorrow. The family clung to each other, their tears mingling with smiles, a poignant reminder of the ordeal they had endured. Claire stood back, observing the scene with a heavy heart, knowing that while one chapter had closed, another was just beginning. A sense of relief washed over her, yet it was bittersweet. The victory felt hollow, as if the justice they had sought was only a shadow of what it should have been. Claire's mind wandered to the countless hours spent unraveling the case, the sleepless nights, and the moments of doubt. She had hoped that this moment would bring closure, but instead it brought a new set of questions and uncertainties. Matthew Keller was going to pay for what he had done. The evidence was irrefutable, and the trial would ensure that he faced the consequences of his actions. Claire felt a surge of determination, a resolve to see this through to the end. She knew that justice was not just about punishment, but about making sure that such horrors would not be repeated. It was about protecting others from suffering the same fate. But Danny would never face justice. His death had robbed them of the chance to hold him accountable, to make him answer for his crimes. Claire felt a pang of sorrow, knowing that some questions would remain forever unanswered. The victims deserved more, and the sense of incompleteness gnawed at her. And the true extent of their crimes, their motivations, remained shrouded in shadow. There were still pieces of the puzzle missing, dark corners of the story that had yet to be illuminated. Claire knew that the investigation was far from over, that there were still truths to uncover and secrets to reveal. The darkness that lingered was a constant reminder of the work that still lay ahead. Justice had been served, but for Claire it was a flickering flame in the face of the darkness that lingered. The victory felt fragile, like a candle struggling to stay alight in a storm. She knew that the fight for justice was ongoing, that it required constant vigilance and unwavering resolve. The flame of justice needed to be nurtured and protected, lest it be extinguished by the encroaching darkness. Some wounds, she knew, never truly heal. They leave behind scars, both visible and invisible, that serve as a testament to the pain endured. Claire reflected on her own scars, the emotional and psychological toll that the case had taken on her. She knew that healing was a slow and arduous process, one that required time and patience. They just leave behind scars, a constant reminder of the monsters that walk among us. These scars were a part of her now, a reminder of the battles fought and the lives touched. Claire knew that she would carry these memories with her, that they would shape her and guide her in the future. The fight for justice was never truly over, but she was ready to face whatever came next, armed with the lessons learned and the strength gained from her experiences.